like you, like the country, we've been on a bit of a journey the past couple of weeks where there's been at no point where we haven't been serious about coronavirus, but at times we've tried to minimise the talking about it. Again, not because we want to minimise, but because there's just so much of it that it can be overwhelming sometimes. There also has been a whole series of changes even since the last time we were on air. Literally, travel bans have now been put in place. I'll explain those a little bit later and how they're going to work. We're going to see several football codes if they continue to play, and the advice is that they can at this moment. It'll probably happen behind closed doors. We've seen all sorts of things change in the past few weeks, and our approach on this show is going to be to tell you what's going on. We'll try and break things down into the good, the bad and the ugly of the day in coronavirus, but we will always choose hope over fear. We will always choose freedom over tyranny, and we will always choose common sense over panic. That is always going to be the guiding principle of the way that I broadcast, and hopefully the conversation that you've come to expect from this program in the past 10 years. If you've got any thoughts, any questions, anything that you think we should be doing more or less of, I'm always open to it. Please send me those emails to paul@skynews.com.au. But let's deal with, well, the good, the bad and the ugly of today in coronavirus. Let's start with the good. Now, the good is that there are an awful lot of people who have got over coronavirus. There's also a very key number that we have been talking about all week that the Prime Minister said today, and we'll get an expert on to confirm in a couple of minutes, about just what your experience is probably going to be when it comes to coronavirus. Now, there are lots of different websites that are counting what's happening around the world. I want to use as our frame of reference the Johns Hopkins University one, which is being run out of the United States. It updates a little bit differently because the time zones, but here are an important number to know. This is the total number of people who have contracted coronavirus since it started in China a few weeks ago. Not a small number at all, but in a world of 7 billion people, you have to look at these things in context. 156,399 have got it. About 5,000 people have died. But this is the story that we should be telling you in the media as well, to keep calm as well. Because the total number of people who have recovered completely from coronavirus is 73,968. Now, both of those numbers are going to go up. The death rate is also going to go up. But it is really important that you know that for 80% of Australians, if you contract coronavirus, it is going to be mild. Now, again, that's not minimising. That's not pretending that there's not something big going on. There's been another couple of deaths that have been announced in the past couple of days. Sadly, we've lost 5 Australians. We are going to lose quite a few more. We know that we have to make sure that we don't get sick, so we get into contact with those who are going to have lower immune systems, like somebody who's recovering from cancer, an older person in a nursing home. That's why we have to be vigilant. That's why you've got to wash your hands. That's why you've got to make sure that the handshaking, as much as I joked about it a couple of weeks ago, that is done. We can fist bump from far away. There will be inconveniences to our life. But it's important to know this number. And I implore my colleagues in the media to start telling people this number as well. Not to minimise, but to tell people that 80% of those that will get coronavirus at this stage in Australia will only have mild symptoms, some that may not even require going to hospital. Here's the Prime Minister making that fact very clear today.
The truth is that while many people will contract this virus, that is clear, just as people get the flu each year, it is a more severe condition than the flu. But for the vast majority, as I said last week, for the majority, around 8 in 10 is our advice, it will be a mild illness and it will pass. However, for older Australians and those who are more vulnerable, particularly those in remote communities, and with those with pre-existing health conditions, it is a far more serious virus, and that is our concern. Our aim in all of this is to protect the most vulnerable, the most at risk.
And that's our focus. But we have to start telling people that when there are new cases every day, we should be asking our health officials how many are mild, how many have got over it. Those numbers need to start being told to us as well. That's why I'm going to keep telling you those numbers all the time, because facts matter. Ignore what, the millionaire doomsday preppers in parts of the media would like to tell you about. 156,000 people have got it. Yes, 5,000 people have died, but 73,000 have completely got over coronavirus. The Prime Minister, while making sure that we don't hit the brake, the handbrake and everything in Australia and grind the joint to a halt, and I'll explain why that's a problem rather than the solution at this exact moment. There is about to be a change that at midnight tonight, anyone who arrives from overseas, be it the friendliest of countries or the furthest parts of the planet, they will have to go into self-isolation for 2 weeks. Here's the PM.
The truth is the self-isolation has worked out in practice quite well because Australians have followed the instructions. And up until now, that has been a voluntary arrangement. There has been no potential sanction that it might apply against a person for not following that requirement. Once state authorities are in a position to give that its legal enforcement, then that will be a change. I mean, so if your mate has been to Bali and they come back and they turn up at work and they're sitting next to you, well, they'll be committing an offence.
Now, I mentioned that I'm going to try each night to give you the good, the bad and the ugly. The ugly isn't always going to be, by the way, the death rates or things like that. It's sometimes going to be the opportunist things that people are doing to keep you scared or to advance their worldview. How good is this? In Italy, where currently they are under maximum lockdown, this happened spontaneously just a couple of days ago. You may have seen this footage somewhere else, but if you haven't seen it on telly, this is the good about how people are handling this, how they are trying to take it in their stride, no matter how tough it might be. Singing from their windows to complete strangers, offering a moment of togetherness. That'll happen in lots of places around the world. Also, the toilet paper nonsense. Now again, much of the media will keep wanting to talk about some of the scuffles, and yeah, they're still happening. I can't believe that is still happening. But it is orderly as well. This was something that was happening in a supermarket today in Australia, where people lined up and a bloke took rolls off a pallet, one per person. Thanks very much. Good on you, pal. And you keep moving. No fighting. Orderly. It's probably taken too long for some of the supermarkets to put this stuff in place, but well done. I think that's Coles who did that. Well done to them as an example of the good of what is happening right now.